going to publish data from an Asta Powerproject plan, and we're going to push it to the cloud. So you do need to be connected to the internet whilst that part of it is going on, and you do need to have Asta Powerproject. Once you've taken information out of your project, there's lots of setup involved in that, which we're going to look at. Then someone else, could be you, but probably someone else, a site manager, somewhere remote with a mobile device, or they could be doing it on a web page, would access that information, download it to their mobile device, walk around the site, update it, and when they finished updating it at the end of the week probably, then they would, after adding progress values, updating on the go, they don't need any Wi-Fi or mobile signal for that once they've downloaded it, and when they finished they would submit it back to the cloud when they have a signal. So then it's sitting in the cloud, and the person who originated that upload would then download that, check it, integrate the changes into Powerproject, and then you would follow that cycle round again. So it's a sort of process rather than a one-off instance, and it's a substitute, an extension of just adding progress into the project file itself in Powerproject. So here we go. So we're going to do the first bit. So we're going to talk about having a project plan in Powerproject and then uploading it and all the things that you need to do to it for that. So here's Asta Powerproject, and this is version 1403. So this is the latest version, and we're concentrating on this version today because it's got a different way of interacting with the Site Progress Manager application itself. So on the File menu, what's called the Backstage, there is an option called Site Progress Mobile. So when you buy the software, the only thing we're going to send you is an email with this sort of information contained in it. So it's going to have a company name, a company ID number, the first user, the sort of admin user, and a password for that person. So that person would use that information and they would log in. So they would go to the login part of this screen, and they would put those details, although mine are slightly different, into the system, and you can tick this so that it remembers you for next time. And then you've got to be on the internet at this moment, and if you're not, it won't happen. But when that does happen, then it's going to tell you along the top what the total number of licenses are that you've bought, how many are currently available, and when it's due to end, because it's an annual subscription. And then there are things to do here about making users and settings and having items already in this list. So I'm going to remove these because I want to add them a bit later on. So I think the first thing to do is to have a look at a project and how we prepare an existing project. So we're going to open one that we've been working on this week. We've worked on it a few weeks ago, and we've added progress once, and now we've got site progress and we want to make it easier. So it's already got some progress up to that green line, and if I go to the project tab, then there's a few extra buttons here that you didn't have before. And so for the first time that you open this project, you need to click on the enable update button, and that's going to create some library items and extra user fields. So you can see how that works in a minute. And so what that's done, it's created a list here of, as an activity code library of the two users, and they are created in the configuration section under users. So there's one person here when you come to it, then you add another person, and these are the people out in the field who are going to be updating it, or they might be your colleagues in another office who are also going to be using Powerproject and be publishing information to the cloud. So I've got a colleague, Jason. I don't really have to worry about his email. I do have to set up a password for him and we can generate one, or I can just set one that I can send him. So having and there's certain roles that he can have. He can be an administrator like me, and he can make other users. He can be a publisher, so he can send information out from Powerproject, but he can't make other users, or he's just someone on the other end updating it. And so I can copy those details to the clipboard, and then I can email them to him so he knows what to put in to his end of it when he gets to log in. So that's going to be the details he needs to log in on his remote system, and we'll look at that a little bit more. And also we can give him a color, as you'll see. That can be relevant very shortly. So we make a list of users, those people who are going to use Asta Site Progress Mobile. Either they're going to publish information, or they're going to be creating other users, or they're going to be at the other end filling that information in. So Jason hasn't made our library, so we need to just do the update side of it, and that will be populated. So then we need to say which of our users can update this particular project, and that's this chart assignment section here. So I've got my list of users, and I can drag a user from the left hand side and drop them on the right hand side. So I can say apply them to a summary level activity, apply to all descendants. Everything in one of these summary bars will be sent to Richard Ormond, which is me for today. But I've got a colleague, Ben, and he's going to do the services later on. And so that's going to go orange. So only the orange tasks will go to Ben. I won't see them. I'll only get the things that are highlighted in green. So we can see that in a column. There's a few extra fields that we should put a couple of extra columns in here now, where we're going to add a code which is going to be a task code for the user. So that's going to say which user we're going to have. So if you've got a code assigned to a summary level activity and everything's blank, everything in it will be done by that person on the parent. But I can now in 1403 say, well, actually temporary roads, Ben's going to be the one giving me feedback on that. So you can be much more specific about which person is going to update which bit, right down to an individual task, even within a summary work breakdown level. So that's one way of doing it. And there is another way of doing it as well now in 1403. If I go to configure and settings, we can also export using the resource allocation rather than user code. So there is an extra thing here where we're not going to worry about those codes, although they still have to exist. We're going to do it by the resources that have been allocated. So I'm not going to do that, but I want to show you how to do that. So if we go to the projects tab again, I've got a couple of resources, and if I look at the properties of those resources, I can see that on a resource now there's an extra field which I can say which is the site progress user associated with this resource. So foreman 1 is me, and foreman 2 is going to be, let's say, it's going to be Ben. So in that way, rather than doing the activity code assignment, we can just do the resource assignment, and that's mapped to another. So here's our resources column, which I'm going to unword wrap. So there's two ways of assigning which task gets sent to which person. And so you've got to do that to individual projects. The other thing you've got to do to individual projects is coming back in, there are going to be some notes, some comments that you can collect, and we're going to put those in a column, and we're going to put those in the notes column. So we do want to have in a table with probably no wrapping, although this can get long, we want to have a notes field. So that would let us see here what the comments were coming back from the field. So there are some from last week. So there was some bad weather on the 15th, and then some material delivery problems, etc. So, but also we can send photographs back later on. So we need to add a further column, which is a user field called attachments. And attachments is should be present, and I'll show you where to go if it's not present. So you'll be able to see the picture, not literally as a picture. You'll see a little bit later on as a hyperlink. You can click on it and see it. But if that column is not available, on the Projects tab, you go to the User Field Manager, and for a task, an individual task, you add a URL called attachments. When you close, it will close all open views and open them again. So that field of user field would be attachments. Okay, so that's what we need. Okay, so we've created users and we've associated them with different activities, so we know who's getting what. We can see the alternative for resources, but there's also another, and we've done everything we need to do in this particular project, but there's another mode which we need to talk about, which is when you've got multiple activities on one row of the plan, and typically this is done for housing projects. So typically in housing projects or apartments, each apartment or house goes through a number of stages which are defined in a library of your choosing, but also they have a single reference to what people call the plot number or the house number is. So this plot number 10 goes through these different stages. There's oversight, and then there's brickwork to DPC, and then there's block work, block beam, and then there's unit drainage. You can see the colors corresponding. So in that particular configuration, if we look at the settings again, there's a section here called tick sheet. So we need to nominate, we need to tell the system what the library is called, where the tasks are coming out to show the different operations. And we want to use their short name in the library, and any later ones will also complete earlier ones. And also for later on, when we add comments in our system, we can either type it or we can have a pick list, and you can create that pick list. So there might be some wind issues, there might be some subcontractor issues. There's many items you list, so people can pick them rather than having to type all the time, which is sometimes inconvenient with a small screen phone. So in this particular sense, we need to, if we are going to do that, we need to populate these settings, and then we'll be in a position to exchange that. But the other thing to realize is that on each of these items, this is a short name. This will be displayed at the head or for that particular condensed information, and it will appear in the 4th place. So this is how we set the order of which, if you like, columns in a spreadsheet will be displayed. So we've got those activities already done. We can take this individual task now and we could export it and choose which users and what the date is. But before that, I want to talk a bit more about other things, and also how we can do a number of projects in one time, because you don't want to do each one in turn. So if I close this project, I haven't got any projects open, but if I go back to the Site Progress Mobile, that's added the one that I was editing. But if I can also click here to add a project, and I can have a number of projects in a list. So here I've got a number of projects that I'm going to export. I can choose to export them but all. I can choose to import them all. And this displaying jobs drop down lets me access the information to see what's been exported, who's in use, what's been done. And so for the administrator, this panel is very useful. You can sort by clicking on the header, and you can copy everything and paste it into some sort of Word, for example, to get or Excel to get a report. So, but before we go through the actual process, then there's I just want to have a discussion about what it is that we're going to extract. So as we've said, we're going to extract information, but we're not going to extract everything. We're not going to extract things that are already 100% complete. So these activities will not be extracted and will not be in a list of things to do. And we want to set a and we're going to set a future date that is going to be the future progress period that I want people to report on. So at the end of this mustard stripe, I'm going to set that date as being the date when I'm going to export information. So if I go to my configure tab, when I come to export it, I'm going to say use the 30th of July as the date, the future date when I want progress reported back to me. So so this activity will be in it. This activity will be in it because it's cuts through that. This will be in it, that will be in it, but these will not be in it. So I will exclude all things not in my window, but I need to keep that end date because that's going to calculate the planned percent complete that you're going to expect to have done on that particular operation. So we also can set a future, a further stripe, if you like, just a blue stripe. I can set a future period ahead of that progress date, which will also capture as many tasks as you want. So you can make that as wide as you want, but the idea being that you try to give people a focused list of things that they're most likely to have done. So you might want to make that 3 or 4 weeks, but you don't want to inundate people with information. So where you set that is in the configuration again under settings, and you set here in calendar days how far ahead that blue stripe should be. So we've come to that point there where we've got the that information set up, and if I've got a list of things to do, then I need to close any projects that are in that list so that I can export them. So I'm at the end of that first process of coming here. It's probably a Tuesday. I've processed last week's progress. I've reviewed it. I've discussed it with my manager, and we're ready to go another one. So I'm going to export all of these. I'm going to choose the 30th because that's 2 weeks time, and we're going to click on the export button. And I've got to be connected to the internet at this point. So now all of that information has been successfully exported. Okay, so now we're at the stage where we were talking about before, where we've successfully done that, and all of the settings that we might have had to do that. Although probably I should go back to Powerproject and just talk about the other settings here. And I should probably do it again because at the moment I've not ticked some of these boxes. So I do want to display the remaining duration on tasks that are not already complete. So there's an extra option here to highlight. I'm also going to highlight this option, which some people don't want to, and that's allow that remaining duration to be edited. So if I've should have done 50% and I've only done and I have done 50%, maybe it's not going to take me 5 days to finish. It's going to take me another 6 days to finish. And if that's ticked, that will allow me to do that. So, and also I'm making a decision whether I should use a duration percent complete or an overall percent. And we always recommend the overall percent because you can change the remaining duration. It doesn't affect the duration, etc. And there's a color coding system that you can use. You don't have to give people clues to the status of the activities that you're presenting to them, but I like to do that. So I'm going to use information from the live project. So if we should have done it by the date I'm talking about, it's going to go red. If we should be working on it at the date that I'm saying, in this case the 30th of July, it's going to be that color of green. And if it's going to be this color of sort of greeny blue, if it's it's ahead of my the end of the period that I'm talking about. So these extra components I should have set before I exported. So I'm going to, so it's not a disaster. That's absolutely fine. I can export again, but it will warn me that I'm going to override things that were there previously. So so I've now exported that information, and we're ready to talk about the next stage.